and Guidry goes, let's go look at something that took place 40 years ago. Who cares? Okay, that's political. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Lawyer's Den, another edition of exciting legal topics. And, of course, we have a panel that's going to go over it, which doesn't consist of just me, although I know that would be a great opportunity, but unfortunately, it's not going to work that way tonight. Instead, the thing is, let's bring some of our guests in. And our guest panelist this is an attorney who went to Suffolk Law School, also went to Whittier College, the same college that Richard Nixon went to, and let's bring in Linda Dubuque. Linda, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. You're a new person in the den, and I guess you'll get used to clawing around here after a while. It just doesn't take very long, but just remember, get your claws and your fingers out and go like this to Adam. Okay.
Okay.
Adam. Adam. He's always the target. Okay. But here's another person. We have another person on the den. This person hails from the State University of New York at Buffalo. I keep saying Albany, but he really shuffled off to Buffalo. Then he decided, after he got his law degree, to practice law and got admitted before the New York bar. Can you believe that? Hard to believe, but he did. Then he went to practice law in New York City, the Big Banana. This is our street fighter of the day, Fernando Leal. Fernando, welcome to the show.
Nice to be back, and I'm surprised I was admitted to.
Yeah, that's right. Well, but the thing is, sometimes it helps if you drink with the right people and get admitted to the bar, especially in New York.
Very true.
That is true. Okay, knowing the right people is very important to law practice, and then every now and then you get caught up with the wrong people. With that, brings us to our next introduction. This person went to the University of Southern California, which he majored in rowing, at least that's what he told me. Then went on to Ohio State University, quickly got bounced from the football team, so he never made it there. Then went on to New York University, so he's in the Big Banana for a while, getting his master's in law. Then he went on to actually practice law. Then he went on to teach law at Georgia College. Let's bring in our professor, Adam Lamparero. Adam,
great to be here. Thank you, Nick.
It's like welcome back, Cotter.
Everybody should be on the USC rowing team.
The U.S. rowing team. Okay, yes. Well, I wasn't sure if you were in the U.S. rowing or U.S. gymnastics. Either way, it is what it is. Okay, but with that, we also have class on the Lawyer's Den. Believe it or not, there's some class here. Present company accepted. This lady actually hails from Lithuania, which is a Baltic state, former Soviet Union, then went to the United States of America, where she received her law degree at the University of Denver School of Law, then received a master's in law from the University of Denver School of Law, and then practices now in the great state of Florida. Let's welcome Guidry Stantonite. Guidry, welcome to the show.
Good evening. Good to be here.
Do swidania. Oh, wait, that's Russian.
No, do swidania.
No, do swidania?
No, dobry dzień. Do swidania is
goodbye. Okay, yeah. Spasiba.
Nice.
Spasiba. Я хотела бы что-нибудь поесть. That's all I can say in Russian. But
does anybody speak French around here?
No. Can somebody mute him? Wait a minute. Okay, we'll get into that later.
Already?
Okay. Now the thing is, our last panelist hails from BYU University School of Law. Then he went on and received his master's in law from George Washington, got me admitted to the United States Supreme Court because he's admitted before the United States Supreme Court. Let's bring our Supreme Court expert in, Jeff Teichert. Jeff, welcome to the show. Okay, and then an absentee, of course, is our den master, Bill Trezevant. I have no idea where he is, but that's okay. We move on with or without him because today our topic is, of course, the drug laws in the United States and also in the various different states. In other words, are they good? Are they bad? Are they different? What are the laws and what are your opinions? And we'll start off with Linda. Linda, what's your thought on drug laws in the great United States of America?
On drug laws or marijuana laws?
I like drug laws
there a
because it
difference?
encompasses
Drug
marijuana
laws.
and other law.
Okay, well, I'm thinking these days that we should look to decriminalize possession of small amounts of drugs in this country and move towards a system where, there's confiscation, arrest, but an opportunity for folks to go before a small tribunal, be able to get some help, have some assistance, and then be able to make a decision. So that's sort of how I feel about it. I'm not in favor of making drugs legal.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay.
Very, very good opening statement. Now let's go to our street fighter, the person who grew up in a drug-infested environment. Let's go to Fernando Liao. Fernando, opening statements about drug laws in the United States and also in various different states. What are your thoughts?
I do agree with Linda that they should not be made legal. You are correct. I did grow up in a neighborhood that was affected by crack cocaine specifically. And there was more crack cocaine sold per square inch in Washington Heights back in the 80s than anywhere else in the world. At some point, somebody's going to bring up Nixon and the scheduling that he did in 68 or 69. I can't remember. But by the same token, he did make drug addiction a disease. And as such, that opened it up for some of the remedies that Linda has just spoken about to get help, to get treatment. The issue is that you cannot get treatment or get cleaned if you don't want to. So in all honesty, if you don't want to, then you go to jail. Maybe jail will wake you up. And if it doesn't wake you up and you die in jail, then you die in jail. I am not for legalizing it at any level. Marijuana will end up being legalized because everybody wants the tax revenue. And there is a schism right now in that at the federal level, it's illegal. And in certain states, it's legal. And the federal rules are the floor, but they're not enforcing them. And now the federal government's going to want to tap into that tax revenue because of the pandemic and shutting down of the economy. So that one is it's a fight that I'm going to lose, but it is what it is.
Okay, so now we move on to our friend at BYU, Jeff Teichert. If you can unmute, please. Your opening statements about drug laws in the United States and drug laws in the various different states. What are your thoughts and opinions?
Well, I am currently representing a young woman, not yet 30, who has a beautiful little girl that's, 2 years old. And her husband was recently killed in a head-on collision with someone high on crystal meth. I don't have any sympathy for legalizing particularly the hard drugs. I also think if you get behind the wheel of a car under the influence of meth, marijuana, you name it, whatever the drug is, you ought to have very serious penalties, particularly if it costs someone their life. So that's my view. I understand and believe as sort of a Western libertarian that, my right to swing my fist ends where my neighbor's nose begins. I would prefer if we could just punish people when they do things that create bad outcomes. But the problem is you put people at such serious risk by combining operating a motor vehicle and other activities with drug use. I don't think we can afford that kind of thing. So that's my position. I am not for legalizing particularly the hard drugs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Guidry, what you can unmute and let us know what is your opening statement on drug laws in the United States and drug laws in various different states. Your thoughts.
Well, I think in a discussion of drugs, it's very important to differentiate between legalization and decriminalization. I do agree with most of the points that were expressed today. I think that today we're going to hear pro and con, and one of the aspects for pro of legalization of certain drugs and decriminalization is that the space, the overcrowdedness in prisons, and also taxpayers maintaining those prisoners could be decreased substantially. And there could be also space for rehabilitation programs within the prisons. I think the biggest con when it comes to legalizing hard drugs is that it would expose society, particularly some poor neighborhoods, to more danger, meaning that heroin users, for instance, leave their needles everywhere, and that could cause certain injuries and health problems. But overall, I think that there is a need for decriminalization. It's very important to know that legalization of marijuana as of February 2021 in a total among all of the states that legalized marijuana brought 7.1 billion in tax revenues, and that money is needed and could be used, and we should consider that in our discussion.
Okay, and the anchor person for today is our friendly professor, Adam Lamparero. Hopefully you are prepared, counselor. What is your opening statements about drug laws? And yes, you can talk to the druggies out in the audience, just like you talk to everybody. So go ahead.
I'm not in favor of legalizing drugs. However, I think prisons should be reserved for the thugs and the animals who commit violent crimes. It serves no purpose putting a heroin addict in prison. People who are struggling with addiction are struggling with a very real problem. People who are struggling with heroin, cocaine addiction, crystal meth addiction, they need help. The proper response is to have a rehabilitation-based solution, because otherwise you're going to put these people in prison, and when they get out, guess what they're going to do? Start using again, committing crime again, and then you're going to have the same recidivism problem. I don't care if you call it decriminalization or not. We need to rehabilitate people who have addictions. It's not a moral failing. It is a problem. We need to reserve prisons only for people who threaten public safety, and those are the violent thugs and the animals, including some of the illegal immigrants who claim that they're refugees or asylum seekers.
Okay, that's fairly set up. Okay, so we're going to run over, now that we have our opening statements, we're going to jump over to Fernando Leal. Okay, you made a statement, basically criminalize, put people in jail. I guess you want the same system that we have currently right now. Fernando, what evidence can you have that you can bring before the den that your methodology works, or frankly has any chance of working, since it's been broken down since it started? Fernando.
No, it hasn't been broken down since it started, and you can't force people to get clean. No matter how idealized we want it to be, you can't force them to get clean. There are some people that do go to jail and they become clean and come out and they live great. They live normal lives and move on. I have friends, plural, who are addicts, who are clean. Some of them got clean in the military. And what happened is they got busted. The judge said you can either go into the army or go to jail. They chose the military. In the military, they kept using. They ended up at Leavenworth. And Leavenworth prison, on the military side, is hard labor. When you get put into solitary confinement, you go into an actual hole and you stare up. A couple of my friends had that experience. And guess what? Staring up in a hole, just looking at the sun and getting food dumped down on you, kind of got them to clean themselves up. There are others that go to jail and don't. They want to continue. Does the system work 100% of the time? No, nothing is going to work 100% of the time, whether we like it or not. The issue now is that people want the government wants the tax revenue. That's what the issue is boiling down to. This is coming down to selling ourselves out to get more money. And since it generates a lot of tax revenue, and now politicians can go and, get donations from the guys that are setting up weed factories and growing weed and all this other crap. Now it becomes nice. And and we also have a government that's been infiltrated by a bunch of damn hippies from the 60s who were a bunch of pot smokers and want to make themselves feel good about it. Pretty much, in my estimation, Kent State should have happened a lot sooner. It happened a little too late for me. And you guys keep saying the people that want the tax revenue are going to keep saying that the system is broken.
Mhm.
And at the
Okay.
end of the day, you have to have some type of penalty for what you're doing. And instead of putting them in hard jails, Adam brings up a good point. Have a jail system just for them, where they get all the rehabilitative services that they want to get. Telling you right now, most of them will not take it. They'll take it, they'll use it as a way to get out and go back out to using and selling drugs.
Mhm. Yeah, so of course, Linda, let's bring you up. Now that we got to listen to Fernando's diatribe of how the old system doesn't work and he wants to continue the old system of crime, punishment, hell, fire, and damnation to anybody who smokes or does anything relating to drugs, which of course limits your freedom. In other words, the thing is, we're going to control that. Yet, of course, he has no problem handing people guns. But at the same time, he has a real problem if somebody's touching a drug. So, what are your thoughts about Fernando's totally incorrect position, Linda?
I am wondering what he meant when he said Kent State should have happened sooner. Could he just elaborate on that for me,
Oh,
please?
yeah, that's real simple. They should have called out the National Guard sooner on a lot of these ridiculous protesters who were spitting on soldiers and the rest, and they should have
But
opened
that,
fire sooner.
but
It
that
kind of got everybody back in line and got them back into class.
no, it didn't get them back in line at all. Have you researched Kent State at all? Because it doesn't sound like you have.
I've
A, a
researched
quote.
enough to know that they opened fire and that should have happened sooner.
Okay, a friend of mine was a close friend of mine, an older gentleman that I know, was a professor there, and he was amongst those who got shot. And so year after year, there's a group, they go back to Kent State. They had to fight with the administration to remove the parking lot where the shooting happened, and they put a memorial there. The students they were in a peaceful state when they were shot at. And so I sort of take issue with that because I don't think that your recollection of, or whatever it is that you think happened there, I don't think that happened, because these guys get together and they talk about what happened. I've seen the newspaper clips. There was a documentary on not too long ago about it. So, and it's like that all comes down to like what's right and what's wrong. The whole Vietnam War. It's like like in the little book thing. People are losing sight of what's right and wrong, and that's the whole problem with a lot of what's happening in society today.
Yeah, but Linda, what is your
Vietnam,
thought?
the Vietnam War. The U.S. should have never been in there. When I was coming up, we couldn't even call it a war. It had to be called a conflict. Okay, so
Yeah,
government has like all these rules. Oh, you have to go there. My father's generation, they're all shipped off to Vietnam, and they're all they're in rough shape right now. There's no support when they came back, and Vietnam was wrong. But if you stood up to it, you either were incarcerated or they sent you over there, sending you over to some other country to get shot at.
but counselor, what are your thoughts of Fernando's idea of taking
So
drug users, throwing them down a deep hole, and dropping food on them through the hole as a part of a rehabilitation process?
when
What are your
you're in
thoughts on that?
solitary confinement, either you're going to find yourself or you're going to go nuts. So there's kind of a problem with solitary confinement, because these people, if their mind goes so far in the other direction, they might be lost forever. So that's not acceptable. People need treatment. That's really what they need. But you can't force someone to decide to be clean. I'd love to sit around smoking crack all day, but I can't because I want to keep a roof over my head. I don't want to be high all the time. One of my favorite actors, Samuel L. Jackson, he was playing this guy Ordell in Jackie Brown. And one of my favorite lines of any of his characters was, my ass may be dumb, but I ain't no dumbass. Now, I used to smoke marijuana. I've tried a few other things. When I'm high on marijuana, or when I was high on marijuana, I felt like a dumbass. And the last thing I want to do is walk around the planet feeling like I'm a dumbass. But you can't force people to not do drugs. A lot of my close friends, my family members. They're smoking up. You can't even have a conversation with these people because they're like in another place. This is their choice. Now, if they're going to choose this life, let them be. Choose it. Sometimes incarceration, just regular incarceration, not solitary confinement, is something that can really change a person. I was walking my dog not too long ago.
First of all, solitary confinement happens when you do something in jail, not when you. No, stop, because you're babbling about nonsense. Solitary confinement happens when you do something inside the jail and you break one of their rules, not because you come in as a drug addict or as a murderer or a rapist. You have to do something in the jail. And when you do something in the jail, that's how you end up in solitary confinement.
Where's the humanity in that? Where's the humanity in that?
The U.S. Code of Military Justice is completely separate from the regular shit. So you guys need to listen to what's actually said.
Well, Counsel,
Leavenworth is a military prison.
Let's defer now to Professor Lamparero. He has a opinion relating to dropping people in holes and food on top of them, curing them of your disease.
Like I said previously, prisons should be reserved for those who threaten public safety, the animals and the thugs, including those who destroyed property and took lives in the wake of George Floyd's death. They should be put in a hole and the key should be thrown away. However, for those who struggle with addiction is a serious problem. And I'm going to be honest with you. I struggled with a drug problem about 20 years ago. And the threat of prison didn't matter. What mattered was that I had the support of a great family, an excellent psychotherapist, an excellent psychiatrist, an excellent social worker. Treatment is really important because even though you can't save everybody, you're going to save more people than not if you put them into treatment rather than prison. And let's even be honest about the drug problem. If you look on any college campus today, you see kids stuffing themselves with Adderall and Vyvanse like they're at a Thanksgiving buffet, but that's legal. But it's illegal to do marijuana. The distinction is often arbitrary between legality and illegality, but nonetheless, the most important thing is for people who struggle with addiction, we shouldn't judge them or stigmatize them. We should help them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Guidry, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think the way to help people is, as Fernando's way, dig a deep hole, throw the person in, drop food on them, and then that would cure them or kill them? And we don't really care either way. What's your thoughts, Guidry?
Well, let me think. What a pickle. No, I agree with Adam. I think that there is a big human factor, and decriminalization of certain drugs and legalization of the other drugs could help us to heal as a society. Listen to this, like drugs are here to stay. Since 80s, the war on drugs, that drugs did not decrease. And when it comes to, we just need to learn to adapt to it and to incorporate it in the fabric of our society and to approach it in the best way. Adam, I really appreciate you sharing such an intimate detail about you. I think it makes you much stronger. You already have been very strong person and professional, in my opinion. But I agree with Adam. I think that even looking at the statistics, it says the Bureau of the Statistics that only 16% of all of the people arrested for the drug-related offenses were violent. Also, there is another statistic provided, very recent statistic by Department of Justice that says that 76% of all of the people who have been arrested and imprisoned due to drugs-related offenses have at least one mental problem. So it goes to Adam's point that we do have certain accountability and responsibility for the people who are less fortunate than us. Nobody is protected from anything. Life is a roller coaster, and we need to support each other, and we need to understand the human value in it. I think that legalization of certain drugs could help us to gain some revenue. That could help also to address it, create employment, and also I think what is very important, provide more space for the police officers and all of the criminal system to do their job without distractions. If we focus on social workers and different systems such as rehabilitory centers for the people who are addicts, we could also clean our prisons and also focus on the violent criminals.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Jeff, what are your thoughts about the Fernando situation? You can unmute yourself, Mr. Tykert, and criminalize put them in a hole, throw food on top of them, cure them or kill them? What are your thoughts, Professor Tiger?
Well, I'm of two minds on this. First of all, with regard to the recent criminal justice reform that we undertook in America, supported and signed by President Trump and a bipartisan group of people in the Congress, I believe it is crazy that here in the land of the free, we have got the world's highest per capita prison population. And a lot of the reason for that is that the war on drugs threw people in the slammer for very relatively minor drug offenses. Now, having said that, I don't believe in decriminalization or legalization because it sends a normative message that what Guidry said is true, that drugs are here to stay. And I think that is a cancer on the body politic. I don't think we need to be encouraging it. I also look at Nick's friend who, two his relatives served as Attorney General, Richard M. Nixon, who wrote in one of his last books that we cannot attempt to address the alarming rise in violent crime unless we restore punishment rather than rehabilitation as the central premise of our criminal justice system. Now, I do agree with Adam in this sense on that question that prison should be reserved for the most dangerous people. But I include people who use hard drugs or hallucinogens and get behind the wheel of a car. I think it's pretty violent what happened to my client's husband when he was hit in a head-on collision and lost his life. Now, I'm sure the person under the influence of meth didn't intend for that to happen, but he ran a very reckless risk when he got high and decided to drive a vehicle. We need to punish that a lot more severely. I also agree with our former Senator Phil Gramm from Texas. I remember he gave a speech many years ago where he said, if you sell drugs to a child, we don't care who your daddy is or what society's done to you. You're going to jail for 10 years. And I think that ought to happen. If you sell drugs to an underage child, you ought to go to jail for 10 years. And then if you do it again, you don't get out ever.
Mm-hmm.
Can I say something, Nick?
Yeah, yes, Counselor, I want to get your opinion on this, please.
Well, I agree in large part with Jeff. I'm not talking about people who sell or manufacture drugs. I'm not talking about people who do drugs and get behind the wheel of a car. I'm talking about people who are struggling with addiction and who are charged with a crime simply because they are addicts and were caught, say, using heroin or cocaine. The answer for those people is rehabilitation. You know, I really think that we need to try to aim for a society that's more empathetic, that's more compassionate, that stigmatizes less. When I had my drug problem, I can tell you, I was treated like I was absolute garbage by everybody from every side of the political spectrum. I couldn't get a job. I was treated like I was trash. And that really made it harder to recover. But when I found people who had that empathy and had that compassion, I did get better. And I think that that's an important part of, you know, helping people. You have to look at people who are struggling with addiction, not as a moral failing. People do drugs for different reasons, whether they suffer with abuse, whether they lack coping skills. Helping them will reduce recidivism and create people who have a chance to be happy in life.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that sounds very positive, but let's go to a negative note. Our friend Fernando Leal. Okay, since his plan, of course, is to dump people like you into a hole, a rabbit hole, throw food on top of you, and that'll either cure you or kill you. Fernando, what are your thoughts about that now that we've run the panel? Have you been enlightened yet, or are you still live in the sea of darkness in New York City?
First of all, what enlightenment? Nobody
enlightenment. I mean, you know,
there's nothing to be enlightened about. First of all, you're
enlightenment would be
misrepresenting
something good for you.
You're misrepresenting what I said. First of all, because there is a difference
Counselor,
between
if you continue
a
this
military.
line, I'm going to hold you in contempt.
You
Please,
can hold me in. You won't be the first nor the last.
Okay.
Nor the first nor the last time that I've been thrown out of a courtroom. There is a difference between regular prisons and military prisons, and I stated that, and it was pretty clear. As to Adam and what he is saying, Adam is clean because he wants to be clean. You cannot force an individual to clean themselves up if they don't want to. Period. I have friends in both camps.
That's
I
true.
have friends in both camps who were drug addicts, who did a lot of crazy stuff. I've never done any of that stuff because I was always afraid of becoming an addict because I have an all or nothing personality when I like something. So I stayed away from it. Everything, pot, everything. No matter what you mention, I haven't tried any of it and I don't want to. Some of them got clean. Some of them are still in jail. Some of them are dead. Guess what? All of them. There isn't a prison system in this country that doesn't offer rehabilitative services. Here in New York City, the courts have an entire section in the mental health and hygiene division that offers rehabilitative services. I have a friend who's a social worker who heads one of the departments in the Brooklyn courthouse. And guess what? There are people that will all of them accept it because everybody looks at it as a way to get out, avoid jail. And I'm going to scam them and I'm going to run. Out of that grouping, 50% get help, they get better. The other 50% are constantly in and out of that program. And you know them by name and you know when they show up and you know what they're going to do. That grouping has to go to jail, whether people like it or not. Maybe at that point, something will click in that'll get them to say, hey, I've hit rock bottom. I have to do something. Maybe I should take my depression medication. Maybe I should whatever, because they put them on a schedule. There's going to be a percentage of that that's going to say, screw this, F that. I'm not getting anything. I'm going to use it as a way to circumvent the system. It just, you aren't going to get people to help themselves if they don't want to. And I'm with Jeff. It should be illegal and criminalized.
Yeah, but look, if you think rehabilitation exists at Rikers Island, then I'll introduce you to the Tooth Fairy. It is an inhumane zoo there where people go to decompose, not to rehabilitate. I don't think that we have any sufficiently strong system that provides robust treatment for people who are caught using heroin, cocaine, or struggling with addiction. I think that's a problem. And I agree with you, though, Fernando. I do agree with you that it ultimately is someone's choice, right? So I do agree with that. But let's put them in a position where they can make the best choices and maximize the chances that they will do so.
And Rikers Island?
It's a shithole.
Rikers Island isn't a jail. What Rikers Island is
zoo.
What Rikers, for those that I've heard, Rikers Island is for people who have not made bail and are awaiting trial.
Yeah, and sit there for almost 2 years while they're presumed innocent.
And even in Rikers Island, they have drug programs for gang members and for people who come in who are addicts, and they also have programs to get you out of gangs.
Yeah, really bad ones.
And some people, because people don't want to get help or don't want to get clean, they don't want to accept the program. They're using it as a way to circumvent the system and lower their punishment when they accept a plea. It becomes a game at that level. And a lot of those guys, you know, if they didn't commit a violent felony, are going to go to minimum security prison or jail, where they're going to be offered even more services. Some get clean, some don't. You have to want to get clean. You have to want to do it. If you don't,
won't people want to get clean more if they're given the opportunity and resources to do so, rather than stuck in Rikers Island, which is a shitbox? Guess
what? But they're there. I've been to Rikers. And I've had clients that are there that I've gone to sign up, and I have friends who are COs that work at Rikers. So I know Rikers pretty well, not as an inmate, but as somebody who's been around. The services are there. Whether you want them or not, that's up to you. And if you're not using them and you got stuck there because you got arrested for whatever reason and you didn't want to accept them, that's on you.
But why are you in jail for using cocaine?
How about because you're a risk to society at that point? How about because you're possessing and using?
You have an addiction. Why don't we treat the addiction?
Because you can't treat the addiction if the addict doesn't want the treatment.
They're not going to want the treatment if they're sitting in Rikers Island. They might want the treatment if they're sitting in a rehabilitation center.
That is nonsense.
No,
complete and utter nonsense.
I agree with that.
It doesn't matter where they put you. If you want it,
go ahead, Fernando.
It doesn't. If you want it, you're going to take it wherever they put you.
Yeah, but I would put you in a cute little rehab. you put them in Rikers Island, they're not going to want to get better. You're going to put them in a treatment center where they have support, where they have cognitive behavioral therapy, where they have a supportive staff. You're going to maximize the chances. I went through this. I know, and I can tell you,
that's you.
I did not want to get better when I was stigmatized and treated like I was a piece of shit.
Guess what? That's you. I have friends who went the other route, and guess what? That's how they got clean. So just because it worked for you does not mean it works for everybody else. It worked for you in your case. There are others that have to hit rock bottom, where their families aren't around them, where they're waking up in their own vomit.
Well, I think more people who hit rock bottom commit more crimes, and they don't get better.
But
prison is not the place for drug addicts.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with Adam. I don't think that should be a crime. As a matter
I
of fact,
understand Fernando's point. I do get.
Right. I don't think Fernando's right at all. I think he lives in La La Land. Okay, because the thing is, they've demonstrated
he has
this.
a point.
No, he doesn't. Okay, why give him any points, counselor, who doesn't have any? I mean,
because he's right that you have to want to get better. I'm just saying the environment
the treatment centers in Washington
chance.
State work. The treatment centers in Oregon work. In other words, there's empirical evidence that says these treatments are the way to go. To create everything being a crime is ludicrous. It's insane.
And I just told you,
especially from a guy who says,
everybody should have the dignity of human beings.
I told you that, but that's a guaranteed Second Amendment right. The two are different.
Oh, I see. So you
don't have a right to get. There isn't a constitutional right to get high and go out and murder people and get behind the wheel and run the.
Well, hey, Fernando, you can find that under the substantive due process doctrine of the 14th Amendment.
Okay, I'm saying the thing is, here's my big danger. See, I have a little drug here, and you're scared to death of it. If I pull a gun out, hey,
I'm
you're
not
okay
scared
with
to
it.
death. I'm not scared to death of either one.
You're scared to death of it. You want me to?
You're living behind a gated community. First of all, you're living behind a gated community, and you don't see any of this. So what do you know?
That's true. Well,
exactly. Come on. You know, you've never.
But you're telling me
you've never.
This I go to jail. The gun I don't. You are so loony.
The likelihood of someone getting off drugs is more likely in a treatment center than in Rikers Island, where you have animals.
Adam is
and you have animals ruling the animals.
Adam is finally
not
an issue. You got to give
because
Fernando's right. You have to want to get better. So I agree with you on that point, Fernando.
There are plenty of rehabilitative centers. I'm telling you, Brooklyn Supreme has a center. There's a center right in downtown Brooklyn.
And there are people that
with social workers who graduated in the bottom of their class from CUNY. Give me a break.
Yeah.
Well, now you're besmirking my friend who didn't graduate from uni.
Guider, we have an American problem here. Guider, you're from Lithuania. Did you have the problem in Lithuania with all the druggies that exist in Lithuania, or is that even an issue?
No, they come here.
They have far more class in Lithuania.
They came here.
Guider, was that an issue when you were growing up?
You know what? When growing up in Soviet Union, you would be surprised. We really did not have. We even didn't know what was marijuana. I think there was only glue and spirit, alcohol. That's it. People were drinking. Drugs were not.
What was the first thing you said?
Glue.
Glue.
Mm-hmm. Oh, glue.
Mm-hmm. Glue and glue. You put it in a bag and you sniff it.
But you know, Fernando. I really hate generalizations, and you've been throwing people. Your analogy that you have friends who survive or not survive is the same as the person who says I'm not racist because I have an African-American friend. I think that, yes, there are some rehabilitation centers, yet there is also pretty open knowledge that for a lot of them, there is a wait. And a person who finally realize for one or another way that, okay, I'm ready to try to get clean. And if that person needs to wait a week or 2 weeks in those good working centers, not the Rikers run, or, you know, I understand different circumstances, it could also throw the person or completely diminish his or her ability to get clean. So I think it's a more delicate matter. There is a footprint that I would ask you to look into instead of trying to use this blanket statements. I think that what is very important here to understand and to tell that decriminalization is not the same as legalization of the hard drugs. I think it is very important to understand that if there is decriminalization, there would still be certain accountability and responsibility. It would not be, hey, free for all invitation to use all kinds of drugs. Yes, there is a danger that some people would be more eager or willing, not that scared, to try different drugs. But yet we have to balance it with all the positive things that could come with it. And I'm very curious to see what's going to happen with Oregon. It's going to be first example there. I want to invite us to revisit Portugal, that was mentioned by Linda yesterday in 2001. That country decriminalized drugs, and actually, in fact, more than 20 years later, they do not have a higher drug consumption. And in fact, there are several positive things that happen to the country. So I think it's manageable, it's doable, and I think it should be done.
Okay. Yes, Jeff. What are your thoughts on this? The drug laws. Unmute, please, Jeff.
A couple of different ideas. Again, I believe that we have too high of a prison population. I was for the criminal justice reform. I also thought it disproportionately punished crack cocaine over powder cocaine and singled out African Americans, which was not right from a standpoint of equality. I also believe that we have to address this with the juvenile population first and foremost, because people talk about how, if you ever known anyone over 30 to take up smoking, you might be able to think of an example, but I can't. I think most of the time, by the time somebody gets to age 30, if they haven't started smoking, they're not going to. They realize how dumb it is. Now, and my apologies to all the smokers out there in our audience, but I think that most would acknowledge that if you haven't started smoking by the time you're 30, by that time you're wise enough not to. And I also believe this probably applies to abuse of drugs. I think that we've got to address it with kids when they're younger, and the rehabilitation Adam is talking about, I really believe has to focus on children and young adults. I also think, there's a charity that I regularly donate to, and I try to raise money for, called the Anasazi Foundation in Mesa, Arizona. They take kids out to the wilderness. It's not a boot camp. They treat the kids with dignity. Their motto is, within every child is a seed of greatness. They do a lot of good for a lot of kids, helping to rehabilitate them from drug and alcohol problems, and some of them as young as 12 or 14 years old. But they take them out there. They teach them things from nature. If anybody wants to donate to that, contact our show. I can point you in the right direction. But I think they do a lot of great things for a lot of kids. That's a private sector program. It's not a government program. But I think that's kind of the direction we have to go, because you let somebody become an adult and go further and get deeper into the problem. It's going to be, it's pennies on the dollar to get them when they're young and try to straighten them out, rather than try to deal with it when it's become a criminal justice problem. So I do think prison ought to be reserved for the worst offenders, the people that are getting behind the wheel while they're high, the people that are selling drugs, particularly selling them to children, and people who are bringing them across the border. So that's what I think prison ought to be reserved for. But this rehab program, I want it to focus primarily on the young.
Yes, and the thing is, from what I understand, as of 9 hours ago, the state of Oregon decriminalized all drug-related crimes as of 9 hours ago. But Linda, you're still of the opinion that there should be crime committed for people that have certain types of drugs and not crime for other type of drugs. Can you elaborate a little bit further on that, Counselor Linda?
I had been reading up on what Portugal had done, and they decriminalized a 10-day supply. So if you were a pusher, dealer, what have you, you're still going to go through the system. But if you had a smaller amount in your possession, then you were going to be given some options. Now, unfortunately, this country doesn't have these sort of options because we don't have a public health infrastructure in the system, as we know with COVID-19. So they do have that over in Portugal, and Some of the positives are people who are interested in getting clean have an opportunity to do that without the stigma. It's basically destigmatized drug use for the society. There's also, there has not been an increase in drug use in 15 to 24-year-olds since the decriminalization. Also, the HIV rates have gone down, and so have the hepatitis C rates gone down. But also, they've got social workers out in the streets, and they've got these vans like food trucks going around giving out needles and what have you. So I see neighborhood pop-ups, you know, and I don't really want that in my neighborhood. I don't want a methadone clinic, you know, next door or anywhere around me. So I think maybe they have the right idea of having these trucks go in. Like, remember the bookmobile when you were a kid? So you can go and get some clean syringes or an option for some treatment if you want. But one thing, you know, that I came across some statistics that I just thought were outrageous. Like 2 million people, over 2 million people incarcerated in this country. And in 2017, the Federal Bureau of Prisons had a statistic, 46.2% of total federal imprisonments in the U.S. are from drug offenses. What a waste of taxpayer money. I'd really, you know, desperate people do desperate things. And I think a lot of those drug offenses are because people are trying to do things to get money, holding up people, running across borders and what have you. And all of that could be significantly diminished if we had a public infrastructure in place that people could get some assistance if they wanted it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and Oregon passed a law that recently decriminalized all drugs. Now, of course, they're a very progressive state.
One of these things that really bothers me about this decriminalization of everything is, you know, like in Massachusetts, marijuana is becoming legal. So I could just go and place an order online and go pick up a bag of weed if I wanted to. Right. What's going to happen already? We have a housing shortage. Who wants a big farm of skunk weed next door to you? So I see this as something that's going to be a land grab for people in the United States and energy consumption. And I really would prefer to see marijuana growth or whatever, like in the banana republics, not up here in the United States.
Yes,
I'm kind of against all of this.
I'm just letting you know what Oregon laws are: decriminalize, treat, rehabilitate, and not send everybody to Ricketts Island or Ricker Island or wherever that crazy place is.
Can I say something on that?
New York City. Yes, Adam.
My younger brother was an inmate at Rikers Island. I visited him in December of 2019. I saw firsthand how he was assaulted, how he was not given any treatment for his mental health issue. He did not have a drug issue, he had a mental health issue. I saw him decompensate significantly without any help whatsoever. When he was released, the useless state hospital, Bergen Newbridge Regional Medical Center, treated him terribly, and in fact, for 1 month didn't treat him. So what did he do? He went to the Verrazano Bridge, jumped off, and killed himself.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to tell you guys is that whether it's addiction or mental health issues, you have to treat the problem and show compassion to people. You have to want to help them. You shouldn't stigmatize them, exclude them, ostracize them. It makes the problem worse. I saw it firsthand, and I'm still mourning that loss every day. And I am just one of hundreds of thousands, if not millions. We have to take a more compassionate approach, a better approach that doesn't stigmatize or moralize, but actually rehabilitates and rejuvenates.
Yes, and like I said, this is one issue that I actually agree with you on, Adam, is the rehabilitation aspects.
First time for everything, Bill. Nick.
I know, right? Yeah, because usually you come on, you're wrong, but that's another story. And today's Lawyer's Den, it's Fernando who is wrong. I mean, I think he's so far off base, and history will prove his draconian methods not to work. They haven't worked since the war on drugs. They won't work because they're not treating it as it really is. And addiction and mental health issues have to be treatments, not crimes. I mean, then what happens once it's a crime? Then you go to an employer. Have you ever been committed of a crime? They put little boxes on their stupid employment forms. And Fernando thinks, hey, it's okay to carry a gun because it's in the Second Amendment, but it's not okay to carry a pill. Give me a bloody break. So Fernando, how do you defend the defenseless position that you have when it comes to treatment, rehabilitation, when you believe incarceration is the way, and it's been proven, I think, over and over again, it's not right. Oregon got rid of their statute, and New York, who's always way behind in coming to Buddha and figuring things out. Why is your crazy city still in the slums of the legal profession as it always is? You can speak, Fernando. Speak for the city of New York.
Yeah. Oregon is a state that I'll never visit now because I'm not interested in watching guys walking around with needles hanging out of their arms or popping pills or taking hits off a crack pipe. I've already seen it. As for, the slums of New York and all this other nonsense that you're talking, living behind a gated community and having a private security force. In New York City, there are vans that go around and they offer free needles. In Queens Supreme, right down the block is a methadone clinic. If you're in Queens and you're being processed through the mental health and hygiene section, and they offer you, do you want help? What do you want? You say you want help. They take you right from the courthouse right down the block. There is no waiting for an appointment. That may be in other jurisdictions, Guidry, but if you're in court going through the process, at least here in New York, you're taken that day to wherever you want to go. I also find it comical that you're telling me, Guidry, that I'm using generalizations when most of the time when you make a point, it's a general statistic, it's a general statement. For example, the other day when we were talking about police brutality, how you said there are jobs that are far more dangerous than police work, and without giving it any context or anything. If I'm saying people, it's because I don't have permission to use those people's names to tell their story. So yes, I'm going to have to keep it general because I didn't talk to them and say, hey, can I say X, Y, and Z? So yes, I'm going to keep it very general. I can, when it's me personally, like walking home from the train station, seeing a guy take a hit from a crack pipe and dropping dead right in front of me, and I skip right over him and keep going because I don't want to talk to the cops, I don't think it should be legalized, and I don't think it should be decriminalized. When I see a guy take a hit from a crack pipe and there's a woman walking next to me, and because she's shorter than me, slimmer than me, he just jumps on her and starts choking her, that guy should be going to jail. In that instance, I did get involved, and I pulled him off of her, and I put him in one of the chokeholds that you were referring to yesterday, which actually cops don't use. It's not a chokehold what they're using most of the time. That's just the way the media wants to frame it. There has to be punishment for your actions. And you can't sit there, and sometimes you can't split between what is a mental health issue when you're effectuating the arrest, and if it's just that you're an addict. There's a portion of addicts that don't have mental health problems.
Why should you punish an addict?
Why?
So,
because a lot of them become criminals. What do you mean why? Because they're committing a criminal act.
Counselor Guidry, since you've been
I'm sorry, Guidry, go ahead.
Singled out, please respond to the rabble.
Okay,
I mean,
I was signaled out, so yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna respond.
I think me mentioning the Department of Labor indication there are 60 more dangerous jobs than police when it comes to single-minute decision-making was a good hook because Fernando remembered it. So I'm very happy that was the intention. However,
I remember everything.
Fernando, you're a little bit all over the place. So right now you're talking about your friends, you're talking about saving a woman, you're talking about punishment. I think you're missing the point. Right now we are talking about decriminalization, rehabilitation of drug users, and whether we should keep doing what we have been doing, which is maintaining overpopulated prisons, taxpayers paying for those people, not providing mental health that is needed. I understand that on the paper, yes, there is an access to mental health. However, more than not, and Adam gave a good example that mental health is not available, by making more space in our prisons and focusing on real violent crimes, the one that was committed by a person from whom you saved the woman in New York, that would help society and in general would make us to still keep focus on what we are talking about. I also want to
didn't miss the point.
I also want to mention Linda's point when it comes when she said that she does not want to have a marijuana farms. So being from Colorado, I had a representing client who wanted to actually get approval for one of those farms being able to grow marijuana. And I will tell you, Linda, it's not an easy task. So there are a lot of requirements that the person, the location specific, has to meet. And there are distance requirements from schools, from residential areas. There are certain requirements that the Secretary of the State imposes on particular states. It has to be closer to the mountain. So it's really the fact, if we are going to legalize more of the marijuana use and purchase, it does not mean that you're going to have a marijuana farms all over the city. It's not going to happen. What is going to happen is we're going to have more employment. We're also going to have more taxes, and the state will be able to have a hand in a game, meaning that we will be able to set prices and regulate the business in general.
Very, very, very good. Okay, so we're getting close to the hour, and so that we need counselors to do closing statements now that we have shared our information on the Lawyer's Den. Linda, we're going to start with you. What's your closing statement when it comes to drug laws in the United States? Some states are legalizing drugs, but we still have federal laws that are against drugs, creating a lot of confusion in the legal area. So what are your thoughts now?
As someone who deals with a lot of banks, I'm somewhat in favor of the federal laws changing so that banks can handle the money, because right now a lot of banks don't want to take cash. And they don't want to have anything to do with the marijuana money, and it's becoming a problem because we need Brinks to be able to handle this transfer of funds uniformly around the country.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Fernando, what are your thoughts? Final closing statement regarding drug laws where states tend to decriminalize, yet federal government still has drugs as a crime, including marijuana. Your thoughts?
Thoughts? I didn't miss the point. Nobody wants to hear what I'm saying, because I started off by saying that this is going to be decriminalized and made legal because of money. They want the revenue. So since they want the revenue, everybody will look the other way, and all the things that come attached with drugs and the destruction of human beings and society and everything else, because they want the tax revenue. As for rehabilitation, I said, create a separate jail system where you put those people. Again, here in New York City, I don't know about any other jurisdiction outside of here, because this is where I live and where I practice, there are rehabilitative centers and rehab facilities that start right inside the courthouse. If you want them. If you don't want them, then yes, the individual should face some sort of punishment. There's an entire mental health and hygiene section of the courthouse that only deals with individuals with mental health problems. And they are directed to whatever mental health facility they need to go to. Drug addicts sometimes have mental health issues, not all the time, and that's the problem. People are saying about generalizations, that's a generalization. There's some addicts that do not have any mental health problems whatsoever. They're addicts for other reasons. And then there are those who are addicts because of their mental health problem. And that's why here, at least in New York City, I don't know about any other jurisdiction, there is a specific section of the court that specifically deals with these individuals and these problems. And they are staffed with social workers, and they didn't go to CUNY or some crappy college. I know some of them personally, as Adam said, that they all go to CUNY, which is an insult because CUNY has a very good system.
CUNY is an absolute disgrace.
It's
and
not.
I would elaborate on that.
You'll get your chance, counselor. You're in the pivot.
They are underpaid and hardworking, and they try to help these people when they want the help. If you don't want the help, it doesn't matter.
Okay, Guidry, your closing statements, please, counselor.
First of all, I would like to to tell thank you, Adam, for sharing such information and bringing some meat in our argument. I really appreciate it. It was brave. I also want to finish repeating the statistic that was issued by the Department of Justice, saying that 76% of all the inmates incarcerated based on the drug-related charges have at least suffered at least one mental problem, one mental health problem. That we should pay attention to that when we decide how to address the overpopulation of our prisons. As Linda mentioned, is a #1 in the world, and we should not be there. Also, another around the world example, want to come back to Portugal to say that right now, after almost 20 years of decriminalization of certain of the hard drugs, in Portugal, the drug usage is below the average of the other European countries. And it also had a different good things that are related to it, such as fatalities based overdose and so on. Thank you.
Yes. Jeff Teichert, closing statement, please. You can take off, unmute your mic, please. Thank you, Counselor.
You know, there's something that occurs to me in this whole debate. When I think about what Oregon is attempting to do, if I understand correctly, in Oregon, it's envisioned that I can't go to the drugstore and buy Prozac if I am depressed, but I could go load up with crystal meth and treat myself that way and be totally within my rights. Now, does anybody else think that's absurd? I mean, I can't get testosterone hormone replacement, but I can go buy heroin without having violated any crime. Can't go get Prozac for a mental health problem without a note from my doctor, but I can get crystal meth. Look, it sends a very dangerous normative message to just decriminalize all of it the way that Guidry's talking about. And it may be a fact that we can't just incarcerate everyone for drug crimes, and it may in fact be best for people that have committed minor offenses to give them the choice, okay, go to jail or go to treatment, and give them another shot. But at the end of the day, we got to recognize this stuff is dangerous. And I come back to, as I began, my client, who is a young woman in her late 20s raising a 2-year-old child, now all by herself because the father of that child, her beloved husband, was killed by somebody that thought it was a good idea to use meth and get behind the wheel of a car. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the guy that did that ought to go to prison.
Yes. And with that, we have Adam Lampero in the post position, closing arguments, Counselor.
My brother died because he was treated like a dog in prison. He was treated like shit. He didn't receive any mental health treatment of any substance whatsoever. I suspect the same is true for those who struggle with addiction. When he was released from prison, New Jersey's hospital, Bergen Newbridge Medical Center, which has quote-unquote doctors that graduated from questionable medical schools and who practically don't even know the basics of human anatomy, treated him like an animal too. He jumped off a bridge and killed himself. He is one example of many. We need to treat people with compassion and empathy, not ostracize them or hate them. We need to help them, not put them in prison. And we need to give them opportunities, not oppression. Thank you.
Right. And thank you all our listeners for the Lawyer's Den, and thank you all of our audience for attending. And we hope we will see you tomorrow on issues relating to the law on the Lawyer's Den. and Guidry goes, let's go look at something that took place 40 years ago. Who cares? Okay, that's political.